Hello and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm Dr. Audrey Tang.
And I'm Judith Crozier.
And this is the show where we talk about all things mental health and well-being. There are no hot takes, there are no quick fixes, just practitioner-led and expert-led conversation. So if you want some tips and tools, but not the need to be perfect, this is the show for you. And today's topic is the gender, or not just gender, but the inequality gap in the workplace. Where have you experienced it? It might be easier to start with gender, but have you experienced inequality?
I think thinking about it, definitely. And you know that the issues I had with my last jobs, and a lot of that was very gender-based inequality, purely because the role I did, the males that did that role didn't have anywhere near the amount of issues that loads of females have in that same role. So that's just something that there needs to be some research done. I don't think really there's any research done on that particular sector.
It's this third sector parish councils, isn't it?
Exactly.
How men and women are talked to differently and so on.
Yes, exactly. And
that's interesting.
You get the male councillors that in general are given the respect that the female counsellors or clerks are not. So yeah, it's very interesting. So that's the most recent experience I've had of it.
I think I've been quite lucky. Maybe I don't know, but self-employed, I think generally you just set your own rates, and that's that. If you've chosen to put yourself below everybody else, so be it. But there is an element for me of what I'm prepared to put up with compared to what, again, this is a gender thing, men I work with or have worked with would be prepared to put up with. Okay. So, for example, when I hired this building for the studio, so I leased it, I changed all the toilets because I would not go to toilet that looked like they did. Wow. So those toilets are new to us, but I know that the person who sublets off me would have been perfectly happy with the old toilets and it wouldn't have been an issue at all. But for me, one of them wasn't flushing properly.
Right. Yeah.
So there's things like that where I actually think I have these demands, but I might be made to. I paid for that, but if I'd asked for that, I may well have been made to look like, well, why can't you deal with that?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
Yes, and what's wrong with what's already here?
Yes, because it's in place.
X or Y would be happy with it.
And that's where I start thinking: is it me? Is it me just being fussy? Is it me being fussy for a woman? You know?
I mean, no, I absolutely don't think that's being fussy. That's just basic needs, isn't it? Basic right.
And the other thing is, and this is something that Ali Russell Hochschild talks about in her book The Second Shift, how many women do the second shift afterwards naturally. So if you've got children or you've got elderly parents, you're the one who immediately just goes home and does the extra work, does the sorting out, does the dinner, does all of that, without even asking. And there is the most beautiful advert that came from, I think it's Ogilvy in India, where the father is watching the daughter do everything and pick up after the son and after the husband, and it's just his voiceover, and he says, my daughter, when I saw you play house, I should have stopped you. I should have said, you're not expected to do everything. You're not expected to pick up after me. You're not expected to pick up after your husband. However, how could I have done that when I was still expecting your mother to pick up after me? And it's actually a laundry ad. And what he does is he says at the end of the letter, I'm going to go home and try and help more. And the one thing I can do is at least do the laundry. And it's a beautiful laundry ad, but it makes such a lovely point that sometimes we learn these behaviours just because we've seen everybody else do it and no one's corrected us.
Well, that's it. And if you're a man and you've been brought up and your mother doesn't let you do anything or doesn't expect you to do anything, why would you naturally then do that in your marital home or
professional life?
Or professional life, exactly right.
So this is the question we are going to be looking at today. We have got Jasmine Mbye coming in today, and she is a TEDx speaker. She focuses on not just understanding the inequality gap in the workplace, but trying to bridge it as well. So let's welcome her to the show.
Welcome, Jasmine, to the show. It's really lovely to have you here with us today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, well, I'm looking forward to this.
Yes,
it's going to be a
very
good discussion. Can you tell us about what you do?
Sure. So I am an international keynote speaker and trainer. I focus on the areas of leadership development and empowerment. And I like to work with organisations such as Greenwich University, Sussex Police, organisations like that, and support them to strengthen leadership capacity within their teams that they have, also to champion inclusivity, because that's one of the key things I like to focus on, working with women and ethnically diverse individuals. And more recently I'm starting to look into the neurodivergent side of things as well. Yes. I have long suspected that I'm on the neurodiverse spectrum, and I'm actually going to get myself diagnosed now. So that's another difference that I feel that I would like to support people on. And I do that all with the view that it's going to help to elevate well-being, help businesses with their retention and the performance, and really because I just think it makes sense in every area, in every way, because it's not just good for the business, because it is, you look at McKinsey's and Co's reports, it shows businesses that are more diverse do better. But it's good for the people that are in the businesses, those that are working in there too. It's good for the upcoming generations. And so that's why I'm really passionate about doing that. So in a nutshell, I empower leaders to lead beyond limits.
Love that. That's beautiful. That's and so important, because I think the need to understand diversity has actually come very, very fast. And because when things come fast, they don't get implemented in the best structure. So I think what you do is so important.
I agree. I was thinking about the speed of how it's all arisen. It's a really good point. So when we talk about inequality at work, how does that, what does that actually mean in real everyday terms? And where do you most commonly see the gap? So in terms of pay or gender progression, career opportunity, etc.
So if we're thinking like in everyday terms, I think inequality is where, you may have two people doing very similar work, but one person tends to get listened to more than another. One person is given more opportunities to be stretched and challenged than another. It's where we're not asking questions. Sometimes it's not that we're asking them, it's just we're not asking whose voice haven't I heard. And it's that fact that could be based on personality type. Just the introversion extroversion can just mean that because someone's more introverted and they're not pushing themselves out there, they're not being invited into the conversation. So it can take place on so many different levels, but I think inequality primarily it's about people not being given those opportunities as much as others, even though they may have the same level and capability, and their voice is not being heard, and that's really where inequality shows up most. It can also be where people aren't given the credit that's really due.
Nice one,
somebody else can cream that off as being something that's theirs. And people not feeling that sense of safety. Psychological safety is really, really important. And if people don't feel safe, then it might mean that they're struggling, but they don't actually feel that they can ask for help. Because inequality means I'm being judged more than somebody else. So if I actually request help, I may be looked at as incapable, whereas for them, it's because they're they're doing so well, they just need extra support. And so it's the things like that that are really kind of can show and illustrate inequality in real life. And the latter part of your question was, where do we most commonly see that? And I mean, based on the work that I do, I can only speak from my experience in terms of I'm working with organisations and those individuals. So I'm seeing it more in the areas of like the confidence and opportunities. But that's more because I'm not working with the organisation at a HR kind of level to get that kind of information on the pay gaps. I know that they exist. I look at that kind of data, but that's more on a broad basis as opposed to going and working with an organisation on that. And so it is where, as I said, I work with ethnically diverse individuals, I work with women, and that inequality can sometimes translate into someone feeling a greater sense of imposter syndrome. And that's affecting their confidence. That inequality can be where someone feels they've got to work, twice or three times as hard to get the same recognition as somebody else. And they're doing so much more. So, these things can really negatively impact individuals. And I think that's how we see it in the workplace. And so that will affect someone's confidence because they're not getting the opportunity, because they're having to work so hard and tire themselves out. So it really is in different ways. And then also it's the case of, you know, as human beings, we tend to gravitate to people that are like us.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Unfortunately. And unless we're aware of our natural human tendencies and challenge that, that can mean because you're like me, we go out and we have a drink and we talk. I'll be like, oh, I've got this thing coming up. Oh, you'd be great for it. So I give you the opportunity. But actually, it's not that person who could equally be great, but I don't maybe get on as well with them. It could be the gender, it could be the ethnicity, but just maybe it's personality types as well, you know, and so that's how I think we can see inequality showing up.
And that really leads on to my next question very, very well, because sometimes the disadvantage is invisible or not conscious to the person who is causing the disadvantage. Okay. So, for example, we hear about, say, senior members of staff and the training is all put on the company intranet, and then they've got to have an app and they've got to have all of those things, and maybe that person just doesn't have it, but if that's the only place you're going to find the opportunities, that person is going to be disadvantaged just by the very nature of being who they are. And do you see any populations in particular that are having that experience, maybe without the company realizing that this is what's happening?
In my experience, I'm not seeing a whole lot of it in that way necessarily, because I do think organisations do attempt oftentimes, but it doesn't mean the example you're giving me is what I'm mainly thinking about. But obviously, it's happening in different ways, and that might be that, you know, because it's happening on site in the office, and actually there are those that are working remotely and they can't get into the office. And I think the remote working has, you know, created some wonderful opportunities, but it's also created some real challenges. And so that is a great way. When you say online is accessible, great. But then what if you do have, you know, typically it's someone that's an older age who may not be as savvy on technology. And so then they're going to struggle with that. If you're not in the office, who do you ask and how do you get the help? Or it might just be you've got someone who's just, some people are naturally more tech averse. They're just a bit like, oh gosh, you know. And so how do you get help? And so then you've got the other area when you're talking about, like, with the younger generation, where it might be just a case of they're coming in and they're new. So it's not that they don't have an understanding of technology, but systems and how things actually work. Are they getting shown that in a way that they can take that on board and comprehend? Can they get that support that they need based on the fact that they may be neurodiverse or whatever other challenges they may have? And so it still happens. And I think some of it's due to, you know, we're so much more aware nowadays. Before, you know, filing cabinets, they're really simple, right? You just got to be there, go to the filing cabinet. You go. Whereas now we have so many options. It just presents a natural challenge. So I think the issue is just, are we checking in with people? Because there's always going to be, it's going to be a bit harder for somebody. Are we checking in with people, and are we saying to them, if you need help in any way, we are here? And if there's that communication, the open dialogue, so we're right, okay, I see that that's a challenge for you, right, let's now work that out for you based on your need. You see, I think that you've made a really good point there, that we're not maybe checking in, or organisations are not checking in as much as they need to be, because the next question is, therefore, how much of inequality is structural, this is how we've always done it kind of thing, or is it, you know, individual, where it's a bit more obvious it is discriminatory, or because I think a lot of it's embedded into the structure. I think there's a lot of it which will be part of how the organisation runs. It's open plan. Now that may not suit people who are neurodivergent, etc., etc. So how much, in your experience, do you think is structural? How much is individual people? And actually, can we do anything about that? And so, you know, brilliant examples. It is a mixture of both, and I think it depends on the organisation as to what's going to lean in with a greater weighting, whether it's more individual or more structural. I would say that probably structural is the greatest barrier, though. Because at the end of the day, if the structure supports equality, when the individuals don't align, they stand out, don't they? it doesn't fit, because the structure is laid in such a way that actually, this isn't stacking up. So we need to make sure that person's appropriately trained, you know, or if we've got to go down a more severe route, you know, to manage their behaviours and their attitudes, that can then take place. Yeah. So even though, as I said, I do think it varies, I think overwhelmingly structure plays the biggest part. And I think when it comes to inequality, the challenge that we have is, you mentioned, you know, EDI, equality, diversity and inclusion, whichever way around you put those letters, you know, it's still relatively new-ish. You know, think about 2010, the Equality Act. That's not really that long ago. And there's lots of work that's needed to be done. But when we think in performative measures, as opposed to we really want to make change, I think that's where we come up with an issue.
I agree with you, because I think one of the issues that I've seen just in conferences is they might have a wellbeing strategy in this, rolled out to everyone, but it's a global company. And now the wellbeing way that strategy is understood even in one country may not be the same as another country. And so there is that importance of checking in, and also giving people maybe organisational freedom to do it in the way that that works for them. So I think that's absolutely brilliant. We are keeping you, Jasmine, and we will be back just after some tips from our guest experts.
Are you carrying things that aren't even yours? Most of us walk around carrying emotional weight without realizing it. Stress from work, family expectations, other people's problems, old stories about who we should be. Here's a simple visualization I often use in sessions. Imagine you're wearing a backpack. Inside it, place everything you're carrying emotionally today. Responsibilities, worries, roles, expectations. Now ask yourself 2 questions. Is this mine to carry? Do I really need to carry this today? Some things stay. Life comes with responsibilities. We get it. But not everything belongs in your backpack. So let something go today. Even one item makes you lighter. So protect your emotional space as intentionally as you'd protect your physical body.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters, where we're having a really good discussion about inequality and how to solve it with Jasmine Mbye. Let's carry on. So thinking about equality in a business, if they don't address it, what's the cost to that business, and where might they get stuck? So they might have good intentions, but bad systems, or they're afraid of getting it wrong, so they don't really do much about it.
And so when you think of cost to business, I actually looked at the cost that has been, you know, attached to this as a whole in the UK. Oh, wow. And it's estimated to be around 106.2 to 128.4 billion.
Wow.
Annually, through not addressing inequality.
That's incredible.
So when you trickle that down to businesses, I didn't go that far to say, well, that's going to cost this business, but you just think it's costing them quite a lot.
Yeah.
So there is a real cost here. And so that's why I said earlier, you know, it makes sense. It makes sense in every sense. Business sense, you know, morally, so society-wise, it makes sense. Because there is a real cost. And then, of course, if you're a business and you're not addressing inequalities, you're going to lose some great talent. Because great talent comes in all shapes, all sizes, all shades, all hair textures. You know, it comes in all differences. And so if we're not all genders, we're not embracing people and allowing them to be who they are and do the great thing that they can do where we are without feeling othered, you know, that's going to have a negative effect. And even if they stay, you're not going to get the best from that person, because I was reading recently about the quiet quitting. Whereas nowadays, you know, people aren't always going to speak up. And I know my own personal experiences, when I'm really done, I've got no energy. I'm not talking. So I'm there, but it becomes quite performative in that I'm just performing what I need to do, but my heart and soul's not in it anymore. But that comes from the fact that I've tried and I've been shut down. So I then think, do you know what? I'm not going to bother, but I'm not going to make a fuss about it. I'm just going to go and find me another job. You know, that would be the way that a lot of people may handle it. So they're going to lose the best of the talent that they have that just is somewhat different. So since we last spoke, Audrey, I've rebranded my business called Lead with Difference.
Oh, I love that.
And it's because I believe that is how we should lead.
Yes. Yeah.
Acknowledge difference, because difference comes in the way that we think. We're all different. If we could just, acknowledge we're all different, then it makes it easy to accept the more visible and the more notable differences. Yeah. Because we recognise that even when we seemingly look alike, we're still different.
Yeah.
And that, I think, goes a long way, and that helps then to minimise those costs, because I recognise when someone thinks differently from me, that's not they're challenging my authority. No, they just think differently. So maybe they think about things in a way that actually could mean that they're seeing things that I don't, which could be an added bonus. Businesses that embrace that difference, they perform better.
Yeah. That's
really interesting,
key problem, isn't it? It is embracing difference.
Yeah.
Because that erases the fear of getting it wrong then as well. Because people don't want to say something because they think, is this PC to say, whatever. But actually, if we just go, well, we're all different. Yeah. Let's just talk about it. It addresses the elephant in the room, and I think that is a great. It's a great branding actually, and very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's one change that you've seen in a business that's made a bigger impact than you expected?
So this is where I was like, one. I wasn't meant to say I forgot to say one. Oh, God, can I really say one?
Say two.
Okay, I like that. So when I think about, key differences that can be made, I did a session with Advanced HE recently on their Diversified Leadership module. And one of the things that I share with them is this statistic that 50% of new managers are rated as ineffective. 50%.
Wow.
Shocking, I think, when you're new managers. And so one of those changes, I think, is about ensuring that leaders are trained. Anyone that manages really needs to be trained in these areas, and not just I was working with I won't name anyone, but I was working with an organisation, and they were talking about we do unconscious bias training, whatever the name, anti-racism, there's different names, but basically it's about trying to just recognise the fact that the natural human brain thinks in ways that means we are likely to be biased in some way. So it's about heightening our awareness so that we can challenge ourselves. And then I'm like, okay, and they're like, it's online. And I just thought, well, what's that going to do?
Yeah.
And I mean, businesses, I recognise there are challenges and there are constraints. So when you're looking at cost effectiveness, online is obviously the most cost effective. But in an area of significance like that, how is a pre-recorded session going to really challenge my mindset and help me see some blind spots? And so until we're actually putting emphasis and putting the dollar signs, pound signs, whatever sign it is, the euro sign against what really matters, we're not really going to see those changes. And so I think when it comes to training managers and leaders, online is insufficient. And I think for the whole of an organisation, personally, it should be some in-person. Let's have some real discussions, because then we can really make change. But I think that's one of the key ones that I would say. And then I think it's about that, that kind of links back to what we mentioned earlier of, what we don't know we're doing, but making sure that opportunities are fair. Okay, I have mentioned this to my friend, but actually I need to make sure it's fair. And fair means I've got to check, what are you accessing? Where are you going to see opportunities? How do people, see stuff? Because just putting it in one place, 2 channel, that may not be sufficient. I might need to look at different ways to make sure that information is communicated. And I think that goes back as well to managers. I know managers are very busy and leaders are very, very busy. So they may not always have the time to say everything. But actually, if they could be that, right, I need each of you to check this because there's some opportunities coming up and I want all of you to see that. It could be something as simple as that.
Communication, isn't it? It is being aware.
And that can mean then the onus is now on me because, they have informed me that I should go and check that thing. So if I don't as an individual, I've shot myself in the foot.
Yes.
Not that structurally I'm not being made aware. And therefore I'm being left behind.
Again, beautifully leads on to this question about microaggressions, because you get which can be perceived as microaggressions, but it can also be perceived as an unconscious bias that's played out, which has disadvantaged someone. So with small decisions, where do small decisions, for example, I'm a manager and I'm doing leadership training, I'm making sure all my staff know about it, but the only type of leadership training I'm offering is done at 4 till 5 o'clock when my females have all gone to the school run. Yeah. So they cannot do, but I haven't thought that. I've just got, well, it fits into everybody's timetable. We can do it 4 till 5. How does that quietly just reinforce that inequality?
I don't think it's even quiet. I think that's quite loud.
Isn't it really? It's just blatant.
It is really loud. And that's where, consulting, we talk about engagement of staff. But if staff aren't consulted, then they're not going to be engaged. You don't ask. You haven't considered me. You haven't asked me, we would like to do this. What would you want from it? When do you think would be a good time? Consult and engage with people. And if that keeps happening, eventually they'll realise, oh my gosh, they actually do want to know. We want to do this, but until you give us the information, we're not going to do anything. So here is POCs. When you come back to us and let us know when is the best time, and obviously you can't please everyone.
Of course,
but you can make an attempt to try and make it as accessible as possible.
Yes.
Some people will prefer in person, some will prefer virtual. And that might be why actually we don't have one. Or we say this is the first and we'll be doing another one. And the other one, this time it's in person and it's at this time. But the next one we're going to make sure it's virtual and it's at a different time. Or we're going to have cohorts.
Yes.
One cohort at this time and another cohort at another time via another means, just to try and ensure that we make sure there's accessibility for all.
That makes a huge difference, actually. I've had to deliver like that once. So I went in person to do one and then they wanted the repeat online.
Oh, wow.
A repeat exactly the same, but just in an online setting. And so, it's easily done, actually. There should be no question over it. So, based on it being easily done, communication, easy to do, what one thing could a company do right now to try and address the inequality problem?
One thing. So, if they were to do one thing, I do think it's about taking stock of where you are.
Nice.
Because, you and I, other people can have great thoughts and ideas and opinions about what could happen, what should happen. But actually, where are you and in your organisation? Let's take stock of where we are, because I remember learning some years ago, what doesn't get measured doesn't really matter. And so people oftentimes like, oh, it's just a tick box exercise. But actually, if something isn't being measured, then just know that no one really caring too much about it. The minute it gets measured, now they're like, oh, hold on a minute, we're getting measured on equality. Like, right, what do we need to get some equality training? They will start pulling all the stuff out. And people might say, yeah, but it's just performative, but at least it's the start.
Yes.
And then if we've got people actually reviewing, where are we? How safe do our staff feel? How safe do our women, our ethnically diverse, our neurodivergent, disabled, different orientations? How safe do these people feel? How included do they feel? How accessible are things for them? Where are we now? Because once we've established that, then we can start looking at what we as an organisation need to do to get better. Because it's going to vary for every organisation. And so I think that would be my thing. It's about that kind of test and measure. Test what's going on and measure what makes a difference. Because what you think might work might not actually.
Beautiful.
So let's see where we are and then go from there.
I fully agree with that. And what's interesting now with wellbeing is that has been taken off some people's CSR and actually put on a KPI, an actual proper index. CSR is almost just that. Nice doing something nice.
Yeah, nice to have.
Exactly. So I think you're absolutely right. And this is one of the issues that we find with just any psychological intervention as well. It's all very well saying what the theory says and what the academic research says. Of course, it needs to be founded in that. But if that person's not there, you've got to meet them where they are and actually see what is going on. So you're absolutely right. And we're keeping you. And we'll be back just after some tips from our resident experts.
A small behavior shift that can break a whole emotional pattern. Sometimes we wake up stuck in a certain emotion, sadness, anxiety, frustration, and we wait for it to pass. But emotions don't just disappear, they drive behavior. And behavior also drives emotion. One of the most useful tools we use in therapy and hypnotherapy is called opposite action. It simply means this. When an emotion pushes you toward a certain behavior, you intentionally choose the opposite small action. So if you feel sad and want to withdraw, take a short walk outside. If you feel anxious and want to rush, deliberately slow your movements. If you feel angry and you want to raise your voice, soften your tone. You aren't denying your emotion. You're interrupting the automatic pattern. These small opposite actions tell your brain, hey, we're safe, we're in control, we can shift this. You do not need to force positivity. You just need one tiny behavioral pivot. Try it today. Choose one emotion and do exactly the opposite action. You'll be surprised how quickly your inner state adapts.
Welcome back to Mental Health Matters. It is a fascinating conversation. If you just tuned in, please go back and watch the start of this video, because really, Jasmine Mbye, who works within leading with difference, and I just think that's so perfect. She works with inequality, bridging the gaps, understanding what those gaps are, but also understanding what they are for your organisation. We are learning so much from you, so thank you for being here. You've touched on this a little bit before, about the imposter syndrome that can come up when people are not getting the opportunities, or they're losing confidence in what they're doing because they have to work harder. What does inequality do to people psychologically and emotionally, and how might that show up actually? How might we, if we don't know we're looking for it, how might we then go, oh, hang on, maybe that's my making? How might we realise that?
And it is the imposter syndrome. You know, actually, you've got someone who's highly capable, but keeps acting as if they're not. You know, they've achieved wins, and it's like they still doubt themselves. And you're just like, but surely you'd know by now. You've got this. You can do this, but they still don't. That can be an indication that actually maybe someone's not articulating it. And it's not always the case with imposter syndrome.
No.
But that can be the reason why a woman, an ethnically diverse person, someone with a different sexual orientation, you know, or someone with a different ability may feel like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm not really accepted. It's because the space, the table was set up without me in mind. So when I come to the table, I don't really feel that my contributions are valued in the same way. And that might be, sometimes it's my perception, other times it's actually the way that people are making me feel and they don't realise it.
Yes.
I say it, tumbleweed, and someone else literally says the same thing. Oh, great idea. Yeah. And it's like, hold on a minute, the male voice just made it sound that much better. Or, you know, the different skin shade made it seem that much better. Yeah. And then that can really affect someone. Or the able-bodiedness of that person made it seem that. These things really can take a toll on an individual. And then that can, of course, lead to burnout as well, because someone is working, as we talked about before, 2-3 times as hard. And it may not be from imposter syndrome, but they may just be like, I know that if I slip up, I'm getting the whip cracked at me. But if they slip up, oh, you must have had a tough time, or, you know, they've got a lot going on. There's compassion and there's understanding there, which just seems lacking for me over here. And so I just know, in order to get the same recognition, I do have to work twice as hard. You know, I've spoken to lots of women, and these women are brilliant. And they're often saying, you know, when I'm in the room, I'm the only one. I might be the only woman. I'm the only woman of colour. And there is a pressure to perform, it feels like. So they don't feel they can be authentic. That takes a toll, and that's where you're going to get people suffering with anxiety, mental health challenges. Links into exactly what this show is about. You know, it takes its toll on their mental health. So even if they're not burning out, they're still mentally suffering. You know, and that can affect work-life balance, you know, home life.
Absolutely.
You know, it can have a real knock-on effect on how they're showing up at home. And that matters. These people are people that have families, you know, whether that's just mothers and fathers, brothers and sisters, or partners and children. It has an effect on them. And then just their overall, you know, enjoyment of work. you know.
And you can have this also in a way in reverse. You can have a manager who is so afraid of upsetting or offending somebody that so the question is about fitting in and masking.
Yeah.
But this can show up in lots of different ways. And more conventionally, we see the masking of the neurodiverse person who is just putting on the act to just survive during the workplace. But I'm going to flip this and say, look at your typical white male manager who is managing a female, maybe a female of colour, but maybe she is underperforming. There is no other way of saying it. She is underperforming. Yeah. And they've given chance after chance after chance, support after support after support, but they are so scared of taking it to the next level because they don't want to look bad.
Yeah.
How do we... I mean, how does that affect you, and how do we address that as well? When, I guess it's with evidence, isn't it? But
yeah, and I think that's where, you know, people are people, and at the end of the day, you've got to perform.
Yes,
so
it's work.
You know, you're here to do the job, and it is that case of if I have put measures in place to support you, you know, that is there something I don't know?
Yes, yeah.
Curiosity, I think it does amazing things.
Yes,
if you're curious, because I've done what I know to do to help and support you. However, you still don't seem to be quite meeting the mark. Is there something I don't know? Because maybe there is other reasons outside of work that's affecting that person at work. Maybe they're just not right for the job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Maybe the job's just not right for them. And then it's a case of, okay, do you know what? In this role, I've observed you have these strengths.
Yes.
It's not translating to this role, or actually those strengths are great, but they don't work well for this type of position.
Yeah.
So maybe we need to talk about, you know, is there something else that you could see yourself doing, you know, because I want to support you, but I've done everything I can, and unless there's something else that I don't know that I can do, this isn't working out.
Yeah.
You know, person to person.
Yeah,
you know, we're human at the end of the day. All of us bleed red. Yes. So, you know, whether the outside looks a bit different to yours, you know, if I've got you here to do a job, you know, it's not about the colour. Particularly to this, those measures have been put in place to support and do whatever, and nothing seems to be working, then we do need to look at how else can we help you here.
Yeah.
You know, how else can we help you? But this role isn't working. So what else can we do? And I do think it is about being brave in terms of saying, you know, honesty. You know, I want to help you because I don't want this to seem like it's about anything else other than your performance.
Yes. Yes.
So I just want you to know that I've done everything I know to do. Yeah. Unless there's anything else that you can help me understand that I need to know, like performance as a person, great, but just performance-wise, this is lacking. But obviously, that's the most important part of the role.
That's why they're
there. To do the job.
Yes.
And so I think being honest, it allows for that connection.
Yes.
And when you can connect, still you're going to get some people that will get offended and be upset, but generally speaking, if we can actually connect and say human to human, person to person, this is the issue, then we can move aside the other things that can get in the way, so to speak.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's really good advice.
Yeah.
So kind of on that same line about leaders being open, how can leaders be emotionally open without becoming overwhelmed or defensive?
Goes back to that word I mentioned, curiosity.
Okay.
I think when you're curious, if you know that children like, what's that?
Yeah.
How do you do that? They don't go normally. Well, you do sometimes. Like, what's that? Like, you know, there isn't the judgment usually. There's just this, huh? Yeah. I don't know. Like, I don't know. I have no idea, because they definitely don't have no idea. They're like kids. But if we can approach it with a childlike curiosity. What that allows is for God to be like, going back to, you know, the microaggressions. You know, I am a woman of colour, you know, my parents are from the Caribbean, you know, locks and stuff. People are like, oh, Jazz, I used to change my hair. Someone's like, I think you're wanted. Like, you change your hair so much. They're like, you must be wanted and you are in disguise while you keep changing. I was just like, no, like with Afro hair, like we just do that. Like you might have a wig one day, you might braid it the next, you might weave it. Like now I've got locks, it tends to be more consistent. But I'm saying that to say, like, sometimes I think what's perceived as microaggressions, this is my own personal view, comes from the lack of connection and the lack of relationship. The fact that someone hasn't taken the time to actually get to know me a bit, to then say, I'm just interested. I would just like to know. You know, well, can I touch your hair? No, you can't touch my hair, but just tell me, like, your hair texture. I notice a bit. We can talk about things to bring understanding. And so that's what I think the leader can do in that situation. Let's talk. Let's try and bring understanding here. Let's come with curiosity and just, right, these are the concerns. Like a little session I did on difficult conversations. Like, here is my concern. Let's just get that on the table. So you know what my concern is. Do you have any? I'd invite you to share yours. Yeah. And then if we lay them out on the table, then usually we can move beyond that to then talk about what it is we really want to talk about. But if the outset we come with curiosity and not with our own judgments, we're going to usually get a better response.
Yes.
Yeah, that sounds really sensible.
Absolutely right.
And so... we're talking about marginalised people. For the question of inequality, should it be their responsibility to speak up about how they feel, or should it be the job of leaders to kind of recognise what's going on or isn't going on, maybe?
Both is my view.
Okay.
I think both. I personally believe that, you know, your voice is in a kind of very simple way, it's your power.
Yeah.
It's yours. Nobody can speak for me like I can. And so there is an onus, there is a responsibility that I have to speak up for myself. Now, there will be times when I may not feel able to do that. And that's why we do need community.
Yes.
And that's why we need support, so that we can pour into one another and help and support and develop one another, and sometimes stand up for one another, you know, and that's where advocacy is so important. But it does not take away my responsibility to speak up for myself, to think, right, I don't feel able. And that's the thing, I think, to acknowledge, I don't feel able in this situation to speak up for myself. So that is an indication I've got some work to do.
Yeah.
Let me go away and do my work. And then leaders, it is their responsibility to then think, okay, I haven't heard from Jasmine, I haven't heard from Dr. Audrey, I haven't heard from you. So invite you to speak. And if you're still like, no, I don't. Now I, as a leader, because I've invited you, because I want to hear from everybody, I now have helped me, the leader, see where there's some work that needs to be done, to think, I want an organisation, I want a team, I want an environment where everyone knows that their contribution is important. So I need to support that individual, because if they don't feel they can speak up, you know, from personal experiences, one of the reasons I do what I do is I was in a supervisory role. I was working at a music licensing company way back when I was young. And I graduated as my first proper job after uni. And there was a lady in my team, and very able young lady, and she would talk to everyone in our team. Yet when we had a team meeting, we're just sitting there as a team, all of the individuals that she would speak to on a day-to-day basis individually, she became a mouse. Because we were in this team, more formal structure, she just wouldn't say a word. To the point where she'd be like, when we go in the meeting, can you say this?
Oh, really? Gosh.
She did not want to say anything. So it's a kind of good example of what you've just said there.
Yes.
And so my thing was just like, you're capable. Like, you can say it, but you're just scared. And the reason I am here, part of the reason I'm here today, is because by the time I finished being her supervisor, I was then moved on. That young woman went on to lead a team meeting.
Oh, wonderful.
Amazing.
Yeah.
She gave others the floor to speak. Yeah. She was ensuring that we kept to our agenda.
Yeah.
And I derived the most amount of pleasure from seeing that growth.
Amazing, yeah.
I was like, I want to do more of that.
Yeah,
and she was a woman, she came from Chinese parents and stuff like that. And so, you know, we have to look at whose voices we're not hearing around the table. And then why? Why are we not hearing your voice? Why? And that's where, you know, we can then, through that double-pronged approach, using one approach alone doesn't work. It needs a double-pronged approach, working with individuals to develop them, and leaders, right? You then working on yourself and what you need to make sure you're hearing from everyone, you're involving everyone, and together we can then identify, you know, what can help move things forward in this arena.
Oh, that's fantastic. Amazing. Yeah, it just goes to show what a good leader is, doesn't it? You know, giving everyone else the space and not just being the sole voice up the front going, this is what we're doing. Yeah, it's really well highlighted. It's been a really interesting discussion. We could talk about it more. But where can we find out more about you in the meantime?
So the best place to find me would be on LinkedIn currently, because my website is being redesigned, as I mentioned, Lead with Difference Global. It's a relatively new organisation now, so website's in process, so you will be able to find me there eventually on the .co and the .com endings, but for now, LinkedIn. Jasmine Mbye, as well as Lead with Difference Global. You can find me there.
Brilliant.
Amazing. We are keeping Jasmine, but we will head over to Test the Trend. we're going to do Test the Trend all together today. I'm just going to go to our panel here and just ask you to give me a very quick summary of your experience of today so far. What has your experience of the day been so far, Jasmine?
My experience has been an engaging conversation in which I feel like we've touched on some really important topics that will hopefully encourage others to go away and have more discussions. So it's just like, yeah, we've just opened up something that needed to be, and we've done it in a really skillful way, I'd say.
I love that. Well, thank you. And then back. Okay, and Jude, what's your experience of today?
The whole day.
Whole day.
The whole day. Okay, so it started off as it always does, in a mad rush to get here on time, which I did. I wasn't late. Then
if you're like me, I know that can be a challenge. Sometimes I'm like, come on, girl. My daughter and me.
All the time.
Yeah.
But I've been working on that. Then I had a very enlightening session with Audrey. So we had a session which was very enlightening, and I kind of learned some things about myself, which was really good. And then this has been really amazing, because I used to work for big organisations, big companies, and it's actually kind of made me remember the amazing things about that, and think about my amazing bosses that I've had as well, one of whom is sitting right next to me. And there haven't been many amazing bosses, but that's what this chat has done. It's been really great, and obviously it's opened my eyes a bit more to equality and how that can be implemented. So that's been my day. And what about yours?
Yeah, my experience has been, so I got in very early, and then I had to go and check whether the studio was leaking, because we've had a leak. Had to put the bins out, had to turn all the lights on, make sure we were all working. It's a very different experience. And then this chat has, in my head, it's been, right, this is a great chat, this is how I'm going to edit it. I like this woman, we can invite her back. Because that doesn't always go through my head. Jude and the whole team will know. It's been lovely chatting with the girls. It's kind of got me back onto I am sane. So, and this has been a lovely conversation, fabulous, really insightful, very astute, very very nuanced as well. So it's been brilliant. But it's so funny. What I wanted to show was every person's experience of the same thing can be completely different. And that's something we just need to recognise. Keep in mind different perspectives this week. Whatever it is you're doing, there's 5 of us in this room, there will be 5 different views of what just happened. And that's exactly the same with anything we go through. So whether you're thinking, is something personal, or did I do that, or today was a horrible day, or whatever it is you're thinking, try and consider someone else's perspective of the same experience. And it just opens your mind to recognise that actually our view isn't the only one out there. That's all. It's just open the mind to recognise that. That's your challenge, because awareness improves our ability to use emotional intelligence and to be compassionate and to understand difference. Always the favourite part of our show when we get to the end segment of Mental Health Matters, and we are getting to reflect on what we've learned from today. So Jude, what have you taken away from today?
I think one of the sort of the key points that I've really taken is what I said is about what makes a good manager. And I know that's slightly, not the key focus of the conversation, but you really brought that out in terms of equality and how managers should be in order to provide that space for their team members. So that really came out, as well as all the different ways in which we can unconsciously kind of show, or inequality shows up because of something that we're unconsciously doing. So that's a really big thing that came from the conversation.
Yes, and I agree with that. And the other thing, that it's something you said about whose responsibility is it? Yeah. Is it to the leader to ask for the voice, or is it the voice to speak up? And actually, it goes deeper than that, because the leader can say it, but if that person doesn't feel comfortable to say anything, the leader's got a bit more work to do. Yeah. And that's something that I think we're very quick to dismiss, because it's a little bit like leadership with health and safety. The law says if I've told you to read the health and safety manual and you don't do it, that's your problem, not mine, because I've said it, and I've said it in the training session, and it's in the employee handbook, and I've discharged my duty. And because of that, we don't think, why has someone not read it? Why has someone not done it? We're just quick to push responsibility onto someone else, and it's that extra thought of why. Yes. Why didn't that happen? Yeah. And that conversation's really brought that up, so thank you very much. And we are going to leave the top tips to you, Jasmine. Okay. If someone is watching this or listening to this on podcast and feeling powerless at work, what could they do to find a bit more of that empowerment and inner strength?
My top tips, anyone that knows me will know the first thing that's about to come out of my mouth, which is affirmations. Affirmations, affirmations, affirmations. Affirm yourself. And I say that, and thinking back to, how's my experience of the day, I forgot to say mine this morning. So we're all human. But affirmations, it's so important what we tell ourselves about ourselves. I encourage everyone, predominantly I work with a lot of women in this particular space, tell yourself whatever it is that you need to hear. So I'm telling them to say things like, my voice matters. I deserve a seat at the table. My opinion deserves to be heard. I bring value wherever I go. Like, tell yourself this stuff, because you know what happens if you keep telling yourself enough times? You believe it. So affirm yourself. And then in terms of feeling powerless, I think you need to prepare and practice speaking up. And practice that in incremental ways. Start off with small things, like I'm just going to tell my best friend that actually, that present you gave me, I didn't really like it. Like, oh my God, I said it. And then you realise your best friend still loves you. She doesn't hate you, or he doesn't hate you. And then that builds your boldness. So prepare and practice and build incrementally. And then one day you go to your boss and say, actually, when you came into the meeting, I didn't speak up. And the reason I didn't is because I said this and this and this in the past, and you shut me down. Or this other person criticised me and embarrassed me, and nobody said anything about it. They just sat there, yourself included, quietly. And then you get braver so that you can have those difficult conversations. And of course, you can get the training and support around that, but it comes down to you feeling more comfortable and just building your confidence and belief in yourself and your value and your right to be heard.
Wow. That is really important to just hold for a while, because I think your point about affirming yourself, so I like that, because when we say affirmations, it is quite easy to go into ooh woo woo, I have a strong confident way, and immediately we can switch off. But it's about affirming yourself
in the areas that you struggle.
Yes, because also if you've said those things a few times, what you then also recognize is, I'm doing that thing again, which I've told myself I know that I do. So you catch yourself behaving in the ways that you're trying to change, and that awareness in itself is really helpful. So I love those points. Jasmine, it will be a pleasure to speak with you again.
Love to
on the show, because this is such a great conversation. If you're listening on podcast, you can watch us on our YouTube channel or on LinkedIn Live. If you're watching us, you can also listen to the show on podcast whilst you're driving along or anything like that. And remember that well-being is not a trend, it is a practice. And from all of us here at Mental Health Matters, have a healthy week.